All right, so this is chapter 13, finishing up young adulthood, personality, and socio-cultural development. It's actually young adulthood, personality, and socio-cultural development. Had some weird accent just slip in just then. All right, so first, self, family, and work. So these are all separate yet competing things on our time, as you're probably aware, and you could probably throw in their school as well. So, you have to have that personal time, you have to have that friends and family time, and then work, school, all of these demands kind of fall into those. Um, Whoops. There are some different looks at perspectives on self. Hopefully, most of you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So he basically presents that pyramid, and each lower concept is a foundation on which the higher ones can build. So, for example, the lower stage is, or the lower foundation are things like your physical needs, so food, water, shelter, clothing, and then on top of that, safety, and then it continually builds until someone reaches self-actualization. Carl Rogers' perspective, unconditional positive regard, basically really just kind of presents this idea that a person is a value no matter what, that they're always should be given unconditional compassion, unconditional love, that everybody has value. We've already talked about some of the modern perspectives that emphasizing identity throughout this course. We're not going to talk too much on those. So gaining independence from your family of origin is an important aspect of early adulthood. It's something that has began in adolescence, and then it just continues to develop, where a lot of these roles and relationships are renegotiated. The thing with it, like, a parent will always be the parent, so there'll always be that slight hierarchy. However, into young adulthood and adulthood, that hierarchy should shift to where it's almost more of a peer relationship. So there's a lot more aspects of a peer relationship, but still there are aspects of the parental experience that the kids never want to know about. For instance, no matter how old you are, you probably don't want to hear about your parents' sex life, and so in that sense, the parent will always be the parent. However, it's more of a collegial friendship type relationship in that, you don't have to worry about getting grounded anymore, or getting a whooping or whatever. However you were raised, so it's different. The relationships are different with a family of origin, and then in young adulthood, some people are starting families themselves as well, and so that also kind of helps that negotiation between self and family of origin, in developing a unique new family identity. Requires some independence from one's family of origin. So work, back in the day, people would live to work. Like, work was something that they absolutely loved. I think most of us today are more in the category that we work to live. We work because we have to. We have bills to pay. We want to eat. We want to live somewhere. But probably, the majority of us, if we won the lottery tomorrow, would probably quit whatever job we have and not necessarily be lazy the rest of our lives. We'd probably do, something to keep us busy, but maybe something that we couldn't really earn a living doing, without the nice padding that a lottery win could provide. Now, I'm not advocating buying the lottery. Yeah, your chances of winning are not very good, but you know what I mean. Most of us, work is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. So if work is dull, it's important to have extrinsic factors, meaning like if your job is dull, there needs to be some sort of reward or external factor that kind of keeps you going on it. So it might be, a good paycheck. It could be certain perks of the job, like maybe, free childcare, if that's important. Maybe an indoor adult playground or something like that. Some sort of extrinsic factors. Intrinsic factors are focused when work is meaningful. So this is if you have a job where you're doing something that you feel like has real meaning to it. And that's going to really depend on, the person and the job. Like I imagine people who are doctors, there's some extrinsic factors because they can get paid quite a bit depending on what kind of doctor they are. But there's also some meaning to what they do. Those going into more of the human services professions, there's much more intrinsic value than there is extrinsic value because the pay compensation isn't all that good. Typically speaking, jobs with intrinsic factors are more satisfying. Again, that's going to depend on the individual and what they like, what they enjoy doing. So it's again, it all really boils down to that individual level. Forming close relationships are important. No matter which stage you are, once you've kind of gotten out of that parallel play stage, developing these closer relationships are important. If you think about like all of the TV shows that are really popular that people tend to like, it's usually because they show these real connections, these close bonds between people that we all want within our life. Even like Big Bang Theory, even though there's a lot of sarcasm toward each other, there's still kind of that bond that holds them together. And even within that sarcastic context is something that kind of hits our inner drive, our inner desire, that's something that we want in our life as well. Something that we can fall back on, or people that we can fall back on when we need to. So building these relationships are really important. We talked about that in terms of Erickson's intimacy versus isolation, and this definitely this is getting into that intimacy part. So developing those adult friendships, couple formation and development. Again, if somebody is choosing to do this, it requires that degree of vulnerability. And, that willingness to be open to really, develop that relationship to where it becomes close. Marriage, cohabitation, gay and lesbian couples, again, all of those are relationships that can develop, that can provide that sense of intimacy. Now, some people are single either by choice or by situation. And really, the crowd that is staying single, that's getting as older adults, is really growing. And even within that context, without that partner, they can still experience a high level of intimacy. If you remember the show Seinfeld, or if you've ever seen an episode, you can know a little bit about what I'm talking about, in that these people are single, yet through their friendships they still have that bond and connection. And it can get sarcastic sometimes, similar to Big Bang Theory, but still those connections still exist. So single people who choose it or are single not by choice, they can have that fulfilling sense of intimacy just as much. Whether somebody's in a committed relationship or single, there's advantages and disadvantages, or I should say struggles and positive things within each of those that they have to work through. So the key is, though, to really develop close relationships with somebody, with people in general. So let's see here. Adult friends that last involve reciprocity and mutuality, meaning that there's really an interchange of ideas, of feelings, of thoughts. So it's not one person does all the listening, the other person does all the talking. There's really that give and take that exists within the relationship. Most people do pair off romantically in young adulthood, which in some senses can put pressure on those people who are getting older in young adulthood and haven't paired off, and can give them the panic feeling like they're going to be an old maid or an old single bachelor that nobody's going to want. That pressure to some extent is unfair. Well, it is unfair for them to feel that. People can make connections and get together at really any age and have very successful, close interpersonal relationships with each other. So for Erickson, coupling is the essential task of young adulthood. Talk about, throwing on that pressure again. Again, Erickson developed this theory in a different day and age, but the idea, I think, remains the same, or at least his intent of being able to develop those intimate connections. And so we'll talk about Sternberg's theory of love, and this type of love that he presents, or the different types of love that he presents, really can be not only within like a couple relationship, but also within family and friends as well. Pull up the next slide here. So this is his triangular theory of love, and basically he looks at love as consisting of three components. So on the top of the triangle is intimacy. And intimacy is just the closeness that you feel to another person. It deals more with friendship, but the feeling of closeness. Over on the bottom left point of the triangle is passion. And this is the strong emotions you feel of attraction to another person. When you first meet somebody, you get the butterflies in your stomach and they can't do any wrong and you're just consumed by them. That is straight passion. And then over on the bottom right part of the triangle is the commitment part. And this is where you basically commit to being in the relationship. So intimacy is friendship, passion, is real raw emotion, and commitment is making that decision to stay with that person for an extended period of time. So consummate love here in the middle combines all three of those components. So there's intimacy, passion, and decision commitment. This typically is found in couple relationships, although not all couples have this type of love. But it typically exists within couples that, have that long-term commitment to each other. They're attracted to each other and they're very close. They're comfortable in sharing their worlds with each other. Over here in romantic love, it's it just combines intimacy and passion. So basically, there's a friendship and there's an attraction, but there's no commitment to it. So the relationship could end at any given time. It's not necessarily a one-night stand. It could be more like a friends with benefits type situation. But that's romantic love. Fatuous love is where there's some passion and commitment to each other, but there's not a lot of friendship. Actually, that's probably more of a friends with benefits type situation than romantic love. So there's a commitment that they're gonna be together, but there's not a lot of intimacy, not a lot of sharing with each other. It's based more on that passion and commitment. Then companionate love is definitely more of kind of a friendship type thing, the platonic friendship, where there's intimacy, there's a lot of sharing of your world, emotions, thoughts, feelings, and a commitment to each other. So that's his triangular theory of love. I think it's pretty useful really any relationship can be found, somewhere on that triangle. And it's definitely not a static point either. It's going to move and shift around as time goes on and relationships evolve. So it's definitely not unheard of, even in a committed marriage, for sometimes the passion and intimacy to fall, and the only thing keeping it going is the commitment. And then maybe it'll float more up into the intimacy, and then down to the passion, and then more in the middle. It's not. It really, again, depends on the individual, what they want out of the relationship in terms of their satisfaction. So if they're happy with just the commitment and that's all they want, then that they're going to be happy. Most people probably want to spend more time in this center of the triangle as much as possible. But again, it's not unusual and not cause for panic if it does tend to float around. Okay, so choosing a romantic partner, there are a few different theories of mate selection out there. There's an entire course devoted to it in the Department of Family Sciences, so we're not going to talk too much about them. But we will talk about here the stimulus role value theory. And this is basically you try to choose the mate or the partner where you're going to get the best possible deal. So there are 3 stages to deciding if the relationship is worthwhile. The stimulus stage is the first part where you meet and you make your initial judgment. So, kind of the first impressions. Is there like chemistry? Do you feel that spark? Do they give you the butterflies in the stomach? Is this going to be a potential person that, at this point you think you could be with for an extended period of time? And then, eventually you start talking, and you get to know each other a little bit more. You get to know each other's, philosophies, perspectives on life, the things that you think are important, so your values, your morals. And as you're doing that, this theory would say that, you're comparing your own to your potential partner there, and you're looking for areas of compatibility. Now, the tricky part is sometimes when this takes place in the early stages, if you think back to, the early stages of some of your relationships, you're kind of you're in that passion stage where you're overcome with, feelings and hormones and everything, and the person that you're with can do no wrong, right? They're absolutely perfect, and anything that might possibly annoy you, you just kind of think it's cute and brush it off to the side. Well, it's actually those cute things later down the road that drive people nuts and can actually drive people to dissolving the relationship. So, this value comparison component is very important, that we pay attention to, this idea of compatibility. And then finally, the role stage. Can you function in compatible roles in a marriage or other long-term relationships? So this might entail moving in, cohabitating before marriage, or it might just entail how, you're working together as a couple prior to it as well. So it doesn't necessarily imply cohabitation. It's looking at the different roles that each of you take. So, you might go do, chores together, you do some work together, and just kind of see how well, the two of you really fall in line with each other, how you're able to work with each other. And so that's the stimulus value role theory of choosing your romantic partner. So you can think about that in terms of your current relationships or future relationships. All right, and then finally, the last thing that I'll cover on here is with the family lifestyle. As people get older, their kids get older too if they have kids. And so these different developmental stages that children go through obviously have an impact on the parents as well. And so it can be challenging when moving from one developmental stage to another. So having a baby, an infant right off the bat, you're not going to get a lot of sleep right at the beginning, unless you're one of the few lucky ones of having a baby that sleeps through the night right from the get-go. Most people are going to get a lack of sleep. It's exhausting. Anyway, That yes, there are a lot of benefits to it as well. So, moving from that into toddlerhood, where the toddler wants to start getting a little bit more independent. That can be hard for some parents to let go if the toddler wants to dress themselves and they get the buttons all mixed up, or they're wearing a flannel print shirt and flower pants or something like that. It can be hard for parents to let go and do that. And then that same thing happens from stage to stage as the child wants to do new and different things. It can be difficult for parents to let go. So not all parents adjust well to each stage, and it can cause problems when the parents and family doesn't want to recognize that this individual has hit a new developmental stage. Parents have to take a step back and look at their relationship with their child, and make the adjustments necessary to let their kids do what they need to do while the parents can be happy. And that really is with the family having enough flexibility to be able to recognize that things are a little different now. So for example, when you're a child, maybe you have a bedtime at 8 or 9 o'clock. Well, when you're an adolescent, 8 or 9 o'clock is a ridiculous bedtime to have. And so parents need to be able to recognize that, have that flexibility to extend that, and even in terms of curfew as well. So it can be challenging, through young adulthood and then getting into middle adulthood, to recognize these different developmental stages and making adjustments as necessary. So that concludes chapter 13 and concludes our voyage into young adulthood.